Welcome to Conversations in Mind. This is a space for conscious inquiry, where metaphysics, new thought, and the science of mind meet real life. In a world calling for deeper awareness, we explore the nature of consciousness, the power of thought, and the presence of spirit moving through everyday experience. And now, here are your hosts, Barb Bue and Mark Gilbert.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Conversations in Mind, where we ask this question: what if your mind is more than just a collection of thoughts? What if it's the gateway to a whole new way of living? So I'm Reverend Barb, and I'm joined by my friend and fellow minister, Reverend Mark Gilbert, and we seek to demystify the study of new thought, dive into the science and soul of consciousness, and make it all somehow relevant and real. So whether you're a longtime seeker or curious about the power of your own perspective, we're going to dive into mind. And today we're really going to get into a can of what feels like rabbit hole worms, whatever you want to call it. Is enlightenment an event, a process, or a lifetime journey or process? And I'm sure that we have lots to say about this.
Rabbit hole
we
worms.
Don't.
I love the rabbit hole worms. We're going to get a rabbit hole
It
worm.
started a can of worms, and I was like, no, that's not it. It's really.
She's going to go for a can of whoop,
No.
I'm sure where you're going there for a minute.
I'm never sure either. Sorry. That's what makes this fun, right? We just don't really know where we're going.
It's interesting. I know the question I had written it down is enlightenment an event, a process, or a lifelong practice? And so
you had practice. I had process. Okay.
Process. Maybe you ever had process.
Same thing. But really, what's the difference?
Yeah. You know, when I was really thinking about it, and it's a question that's come up in some other discussions I've had with other people, is enlightenment, is it an immediate event, or is it something that's developed over time? And I think that's a similar kind of way of saying it, is because I know that I'll just tell you a quick story. When I was young and I would start meditating, I kept thinking I was going to get this mystical experience of lights flashing, and it was going to be like, the ending of
la 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 angels, the herald angels sing.
Angels would be singing, or it was going to be like a Space Odyssey's final 10 minutes. I'm going to be floating through space with colored lights.
I know. I was always looking for that. Oh God, I was looking for that.
Man, I was disappointed when I didn't get it. But
yeah, it makes it feel like the practice isn't working because you're not we set this expectation up in some way, and then you think, oh, this isn't working. Well,
that is so true. And I know that I was looking for that sort of like really mystical kind of how I imagined it was going to be. And although I have had experiences, it's one of those things where I believe that in the infinite variety of spirit, there are people who can have those experiences and have that moment of it's off, it's on, and they're totally different from who they were a moment ago. And I think there are most people go through a gradual process. And so, that's been my experience, is that I'm certainly not the person in the degree that I would call myself enlightened, which has a sense of hubris about it, even in saying that, is it's something that's grown over time rather than an immediate event. But I have had little leaps, little jumps where things have really pushed me along. But one of the things I think that's essential here, and we may want to get into this at the outset or not, is we sort of throw words like enlightenment around and have an idea of what we mean by that. And, so I was always thinking about that this week. I thought, well, what is enlightenment? And how do we, I have an idea of it, but.
Who did you ask?
I didn't go out and ask.
What did you ask? What did you ask?
Yeah. Well, what I will tell you where I've come to believe is that enlightenment is the equivalent of a lot of other terms that we use. There are some people who like to use awakening or waking up, and I think that's a common synonym for it. I know that if you get into some of the works of people like Aurobindo or perhaps Yogananda. They call it self-realization. Self-realization is the same thing. It's because it's going from the small self to the larger self, little s to big S self. It's a realization. I know that a lot of people like to call it liberation. Liberation from the world of form to the world of spirit. I know that sometimes when I'm reading Holmes, I sometimes think when he uses the word freedom, I think he's actually talking about enlightenment. And that's sort of a new revelation for me recently. But
I was seeing, I think Holmes would, if we're going to lean into Holmes, I think that I would use the phrase unity consciousness.
mm-hmm.
When we have those moments of clarity of our at oneness,
Yeah,
that those are the moments. But enlightenment is not a thing that we live in 24/7.
Yeah, no, that's true. And I think Holmes also used the word cosmic consciousness.
Yeah.
And cosmic consciousness, he liked to point at the book by Burke, who written in the late 1800s, where he studied cosmic consciousness and the cosmic consciousness experiences and sort of described what those were. And so there is a state of consciousness that I think people can attain through having an immediate something happens, and they have this. It's sort of like when you get drunk and then you're not drunk. You certainly know that you're in this what you would call your normal day-to-day state of experience, and then there are those others that sometimes you can get, like in drug-induced experiences or alcohol, or even in the sleep state. The dream state is another state of consciousness. And I think that in our normal state, when we go from a normal waking state of seeing things separate from ourselves and navigating around in this world of form, that we can have an experience that goes, and we see through the form, that there are experiences that take us into a new realization of this world that we're living in. And I think Holmes called that cosmic consciousness. I think his illumined experience that he had, where he saw everything light, it was late in the 50s, and when he was speaking in front of the Whittier Church. I think that was probably one of these experiences for him. And so I think that when we talk about enlightenment, I think a part of it is this quick, immediate sensory experience that clicks in your perception of the world right in this moment. I think that's one way of looking at it. And I think the other way of looking at it is a sort of gradual overall realization of the unity of everything and the interplay of everything, and that you're not this separate conscious individual who is separate apart from all that you experience. And so I think there's two ways really. It's an immediacy experience, and there's sort of a gradual waking up in your day-to-day affairs and how you look at life. What do you say to that?
That was a lot. So what I would say is yes, and I do think going back to what you said about making an enlightenment like this end goal thing, or like this thing that has to happen, that we treat it a lot like we treat sort of instant fame. We talk a lot about people who go on shows like The Voice or go on and they're instantly famous. And what we don't look at is the fact that they spent 10 or 15 or 20 years prior to that practicing, learning, practicing, being in front of crowds, doing the work. And even, and if you look at even Buddha's enlightenment experience, he had been meditating for quite some time, according to the legends, the stories. He had been meditating for a long time, probably having the average everyday meditation that we all do, right? Before then he had that moment. Same with Holmes. He had been doing years of work and study, and then he had that moment, and we call it this cosmic moment. I do think that people that have near-death experiences often have this in a more lightning sort of way. And those tend to be very life-changing from what I've read there's a common theme in those stories, some common themes in those stories, and they really tend to be life-changing for people, at least the ones that write about them and talk about them. So I do think, that it's like one of those things where we think, oh, I'm going to have this moment. It's going to change my life. Everything's going to be all better. Nothing's going to be hard anymore. And that's just not real.
Yeah.
wish it was real, but it's not, at least in our life experience so far. And honestly, if you're a person who's had one of these and it was so far a lifetime experience, we would love to hear from you. I would love to hear from you. So please, like, shoot us a note because I want to talk to you.
Yeah, I
But
feel it's sort of like a bell curve, that there may be a small fraction of people who have these sort of instant experiences and it changes their life forever. And but I think the vast majority of people are probably somewhere in the middle. There may be some down on the very end, who on the other end of the spectrum, who may never have any of these experiences. They may never have even any desire to grow or have a sense of enlightenment. They're very content in this material world and have no desire or push towards anything more than this. So I think there's, but I think the vast majority of the people, like I said, a bell-shaped curve, and probably most people are somewhere in a norm of moving through life. They either, if they're on the one end, they may not even be interested in it and have no push towards that. And on the other end, they may have a push towards it. And then they're taking spiritual classes, they're meditating, they're doing things to ready themselves for that experience. But what's interesting to me is that, and this may take us in a direction we may not want to go, but there have been experiences and information that I've gleaned that enlightenment, or that sense of waking up, is right there with us at all the time. So there's part of us that think that we have to walk a long path to get to it, that we got to go through all the steps, to accomplish that. And I think for most of us that maybe there is a readiness aspect that we have to do, where we go through certain practices and experiences to ready ourselves for waking up. But I also recognize that I think that it's sitting there right there in us. It's right sitting, and it's just a matter of changing perspectives. And it could be a slight shift, as one of my wife's teachers likes to say. It's a slight of light away, is how he phrases it. And it just means it's there, but it's all a matter of, can you shift your attention in that couple of degrees that makes you aware of the difference from how you're normally looking at stuff, where it's Mark walking around in the physical world, talking to other people and knocking around and doing things with objects. And that's sort of like the day-to-day world, but it's right there at the same time. And all we got to do is like shift perspective, just a bit, but we don't see that. We don't know it. And I think some people can get it immediately, but they may not keep it. That's one of those things where people have a mystical experience. And you hear of people who say, well, I had it and it stayed with me for days and it's changed my life forever, et cetera, much like a near-death experience has changed so many people. But I think many people also slip back. They get into they're mesmerized by this physical world, and it starts taking over their story again.
so what comes up talking though is what is the difference between an enlightenment experience and a sense of awe and wonder? Because to this is just kind of coming through. Like, if you're out in the world and you stop and you talk about it being right there, if you are having an experience of staring out over the lake, and you have that and you're able to reach for that, like, awness of just how amazing life is, the world is, the beauty of things are, and the energy around all of it, then is that not similar, the same as an enlightenment? Like, is that because how those are the moments to me in our day-to-day experience where we come to that place of wonder and awe that are truly the mystical moments. And they don't have to come with a thunderclap or a flash of light in your brain. They can just be the minute that you take a minute and you recognize what's right here, and how beautiful life can be or is. Without, I would say it's those rare moments when you realize that you don't have to strain for it.
Yeah.
That it just is, that it's all right here and it just is. And we don't actually have to call it working for it. We don't have to work for a sense of enlightenment. We have to let it absorb us.
Yeah, it's like it's always there, but we're so immersed in this material world
And
that
then
we
work for
can't
something.
sense it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's different ways. I agree with you that those moments of awe and wonder truly are mystical moments. I would add to that moments of deep, deep love,
Yes.
just an outpouring of love, and for some thing, or your dog, your spouse, your children, grandchildren, whatever it is. There's these moments of just overwhelming love that come through me that I feel like, wow, I just see how we're connected, and what a glorious experience that I get to feel the sense of love flowing through me and from whatever entity that is that I see separate from me in a way, but through the process recognize the interconnectedness through the flow of love.
And it doesn't even have to be somebody that we're close to. I just got back from a weekend retreat where Ricky Byers Beckwith was singing. And oh my God, I haven't heard her live in so long. And if anybody can pull out of thin air the energy of connection through music, it is her. And there were moments in this whole thing where, she's doing her thing and we're doing ours, but looking at each other. And there's this woman in my small group I'm probably never going to see again in my life, but had one of those like eyeball to eyeball moments of like pure expression and pure love and pure acceptance and pure like, here we all are in this soup of humanity, but here we all are in this beautiful soup of humanity at the same time. Does that make any? Am I making any sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. And what it brings up for me, Barb, is is a beautiful piece of music. And there are certain musical melodies. Pachelbel's canon, for one, does it for me. That opens me to some sort of transcendent experience. Just hearing it, I just feel peaceful in the flow, and sometimes it's just a few bars in one song can do that for me. It's like something just catches me and says, "This is just glorious."
Ricky's
And
song Oya Heya. I don't even know what that word means. But I had not heard her sing. I had not heard that song probably in over 20 years. I'm just like not on my radar for some reason. And when she did it, it was like being transported into this completely other place. In fact, I even had to ask her to do it again right before we were leaving. So I was like, could you please just, even if you just sing the chorus just one more time. And the whole room stopped. Everybody's like cleaning up and getting ready to go. The whole room stopped and started to sing that song. And there's just some depth in it that I don't know. Yes, music can do it. Meditation can do it. I think nature is really one of the keys to all of that, but it doesn't have to be. We don't have to go for a 2-hour drive to the mountains. We can just stare at the tree off the balcony and notice that it's changed. I've been gone for 2 weeks. The tree has completely changed off my balcony.
mm-hmm.
Morning, I was like, wow, okay, I don't know. Spring is such a great time for me in this. Like I am easily enamored with the regrowing of life in spring. So it's good. it's easy right now because winter is harder.
Although I can tell you, I've had
Winter is
moments when
coming.
I was snowshoeing in the middle of a forest that was like quiet and had that sort of crystalline feeling to the air, and you're in the
When
middle
it snows, God, yeah, yes.
and related to what you're talking about is Mary and I just finished watching this 3-part PBS thing they came out with recently on Thoreau.
I saw that advertised. I need to catch that. Yeah.
But one of the things that they use a lot of quotes from his writings, and especially the time that he was at Walden. But a lot of what he was doing was just going out and observing and being in nature and watching the minutia of nature.
Mm-hmm.
And in the writings, you can't help but see that he's having sort of a transcendent experience through the very nature of his communing with what just seemed, the ordinary things that are going around us every day, but especially in nature, because we surround ourselves with, human artifacts for the most part, and we can't get that same kind of of sense of connectedness with things that we can when we get out in nature and we're immersed in life, in the flow of life, and seeing its interconnectedness and such.
Although I do have to say, I prefer to do it with plumbing, which he did not have. With plumbing, which he did not have.
Oh, okay.
I would prefer to have my Enlightenment be include hot water and coffee.
How about a nice Wi-Fi connection too while we're at it?
That always helps because here we are, right?
But
I think we need to talk. Oh, go ahead. Oh, I was going to say, I think we should probably talk a little bit about the New Thought Media Network and asking folks who are listening to give New Thought Media Network a look and some support and some love, and check out the other people who are also showing up there and doing good work.
Absolutely. And to that degree, let's listen to this message here.
Yeah.
We hope you're enjoying Conversations in Mind. This program is made possible by the New Thought Media Network, a nonprofit that's supporting conscious, spiritual media. If you'd like to support this work, just scan the QR code to make a donation. It lets the network know you like this show and helps them to continue bringing you this type of content. You can also go to ntmedia.org and click on Donate. Thank you for being part of the conversation. Now, back to the show.
And I always feel compelled to add that you can stop and back it up, because now you're getting your camera out, trying to turn the camera on your phone. Back it up to the QR code and then point it at it if it went by too quickly. But we do ask that you support this nonprofit organization, which brings not only this program, but so many other wonderful programs to you free of charge that you can watch on YouTube.
And if you use that particular QR code, then we know that you've been listening to this program, and that's lovely as well.
Yeah.
But
we also want your comments and feedback, and we do get comments from people who are interested in dialoguing around these topics and giving us suggestions. And if you've got a question or a suggestion for a future topic you'd like us to cover in one of these videos, be sure to do that as well.
Yeah, and shout out to you, Mark. I've been gone for a couple of weeks and not online very much, so you've been doing a great job of answering people's questions for us. I appreciate that. I went back and read a bunch of them, but I was just way too tired when I got home to try to give any good coherent answers. So I'm behind, but
that's okay. I'm sure the tables will be turned at some point in the future.
Yeah, you're going to go on vacation too. So enlightenment as a process or a lifelong event. So what do you think? I always like when I'm speaking or, doing this is to look at what is it that blocks us from having these experiences? Because the way we're talking about it, these experiences are available to us all the time with a turn of awareness, right? At some level, there are the big ones, Buddha under the tree, Jesus out in the desert. Of course, he wasn't eating for 3 days either. So, like some of those are helped along in some ways. But if we're talking about sort of the everyday moments, and maybe we are, maybe we aren't, is enlightenment beyond the everyday moments? Or is a practice of noticing the everyday moments something that brings about greater what we would call enlightenment? Because I would call enlightenment awareness and connection with the divine, right? With source. So the more we recognize that is happening in our life and that flow is continuous, the more we turn to that flow, then I would call that sort of living in an enlightened state, even though we are still living on this planet Earth with its books and its distractions and its all the things, right? You call it the material world. It is the material world. So is living enlightened simply living in the everyday wonder, or is enlightenment the big flash and it changes everything for the next day? And I don't know that I know the answer completely. I would say that it's both.
I would too, Barb. And for me, it gets back into, I think there's degrees of enlightenment. I know some teachers won't necessarily say that. They think it's a off-on kind of thing. But back to that way I was describing it earlier with, I think that most people go through life experiences that if they truly are interested in becoming enlightened or waking up, that they develop that mindset. And it can come in a flash through life experiences like we were talking about, or more likely it comes over a pattern of experiences. But even if they get to that, what we might call a waking up stage, I think there's still degrees of it. I think there's degrees of where we, sometimes I think we might want, and this is going totally different here, I apologize.
No,
but
we don't prep. The road goes where the road goes, right?
The road goes where the road goes.
That was our agreement about this. The road goes.
But I think, that people can, there's the state of like monks who remove themselves from life, from all the material world, and live in a state of isolation in order to try to seek a state of enlightenment that's divorced from physical reality as much as possible. And then there are people who build enlightenment into a very worldly experience so that they are moving through the world and become enlightened or higher degrees of awareness in this physical world. And so then the question becomes, what are you going to do with that knowledge? Let's say you get to a degree of enlightenment. Are you going to stay isolated from the world, or are you going to live in the world? And to me, the process of enlightenment also includes an aspect of recognizing that everything that we see out in this world, everything that looks to be separate and apart from us, that it's not us, and I think last week or so you were asking me about spiritual practice, and I said one of the things I say is that I'm not the world, I'm not my body, I'm not my thoughts, and who am I? And who am I is a transcendent self that transcends this form, and that transcendence of this physical form that I call Mark first goes through a process of divorcing itself from the material world. And then it goes to an even higher state where it replaces and returns to the physical world with a recognition that everything that it experiences is inside of me. And I believe that's the truth ultimately for everybody, is that what we experience as this outer world is not our truth, but it's an experience that we're going through, and it is inside of us. It is all inside of us. And so even every person, every animal, every event in the world is something that is transpiring inside the entity that is Mark, and that aspect of me that is tied to, and I know is connected to spirit or God or the greater transcendent self. So there's this process of denying the world and then accepting the world as within me, is the point I'm trying to make. And so why should, in this process of doing that, would we not go through being a monk to release the world, but then also coming back into the world with a higher knowledge of the interconnectedness of all that is?
Yeah, I've always said it'd be easy to be the guru on the hill. It is much more interesting to me to find that state of awareness and be in the world, and to use that state of awareness to help other people in whatever way.
Nobody's cutting you off in traffic when you're sitting as a monk in a cave somewhere.
Right. And yeah, I mean, so it's also not a denial. I think enlightenment also, or this state of awareness thing, is not a denial of our feelings. It's not a denial of the human experience.
Mm-hmm.
It is an enhancement of the human experience. Because we're here for a reason. We're here to learn something. We're here to grow through something. We're here to potentially move the planet into a greater state of awareness, as a whole, which I believe has to be the next thing, right? We're in this soup that we're in because we're gonna get lifted up out of it in a profound way. That's what I believe. I have to stick with that. But it does not mean denying those things. It means coming at them from a standpoint of how do we not fix from the broken place? How do we completely uplift and change, and create anew, and that means all of us having some new way of being in it, but not denying it.
Mm-hmm.
We don't get it is so easy in our teaching to try to tell people that, that those old questions of what did you do to create this in your life, which is just nothing but shaming and blaming, right? But really, how does whatever it is that's happening in your life, how does your grief, how does your loss, how does your whatever it is thing move you to a state of greater unity and oneness as you heal it, not ignore it.
Hmm.
As
Yeah,
you
yeah,
heal, as you heal, not ignore. I
yeah.
guess. And I'd love to say, oh, you can just snap your fingers, it's all gone. I don't think that we're in that place yet. And there might be somebody that is, that I don't
Yeah,
know.
what you're really describing, and I agree with it 100%, is that we're first immersed in and believe totally that this world and all these events are happening to this person that we are.
Oh yeah, the
And
stages of consciousness. Yeah.
yeah, it's the stages of consciousness. It's done to me, it's done by me, it's done through me, it's done as me. And
Right.
I do think that model it does line up from a process, but how I'd like to sort of reframe it for half a moment is that we live with our attention in this outer world as separate from us, and that we are interacting with it in sort of a victim way. Over time, we learn to grow and become enlightened and recognize that all this stuff out there is, first off, we discover that it's not who we really are, and that that there's a deeper essence that's within us that is our truth.
Agree.
And as we recognize that, then there's sort of a denial aspect to the external world a little bit in that process, because we've traveled the external world, we've gone back into this internal world and said, this is our ultimate truth. And then we go a little step further and we say, oh, and this is part of me as well. But we come back kind of like on the hero's journey with a new awareness towards the world. It's not something that we're a victim to, but it's something that is a part of us. And is an expression of us as us, that we are part of something greater and grander, the divine God, the all, whatever you want to call it. And that flow of that essence includes this beautiful, glorious, awe-filled experience that we're moving through. And that it's a part of us too. It's not something to deny. It's something to then come back and embrace. And, as you're saying, come back with that higher consciousness to want to say, this world that we're living in and moving and having our being, do I want it to be one of divisiveness and hate and destruction, or do I want it to be one of love and joy and everybody living to their highest potential? We start seeing that we play a role in the creation of this world, and come back with an intention to create a better world.
Yes.
It calls us to expand this world to what we know as possibilities, goodness in its highest level.
Yes. And it is interesting though, like the dance between wanting to move beyond those conditions and not denying that those conditions existed for millions of people or for even ourselves. Like
Mhm.
it is a really interesting energetic dance between those two things, and um, and at some level, you know, we all live out of most of us are living out of our past experiences, right? We don't have any other frame of reference. So, so potentially these enlightenment experiences move us out of that old frame of reference and into an expanded frame of reference for what might be possible in the future, while still having compassion for our previous selves and for the rest of the world who might be caught in that,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
and responsibility for the parts that we created, not guilt but responsibility, which are two different things. And um, so yeah, I'm not sure where I'm going with all that, but it, it feels like that we're on. I mean, I'd say 20 years ago, all of us in New Thought were talking about being on the crest of some wave of change. But I don't think the change went the way we thought it was going to be going, but the change is happening.
Yeah.
we don't like it. It's not comfortable. It's actually fairly ugly. Well, it is just really ugly, let's call it. Um, Yet out of that, maybe we get some gap in a gap of enlightenment that allows us to put this aside and be done with it and move into the next thing from a new place, instead of building from what we knew, building from something anew. I think I'm borrowing from a little bit from somebody I had a bunch of conversations with over the weekend, but it was good stuff. So
Well, this is something we talked about, I think, in our previous episode about the fact that there's a lot of craziness going on in the world, and
yeah.
that's a process that we're moving through for an experience so that we can choose a higher vision and a higher world, and that we're sort of in a choice point in the world. And so I think that's part of the natural spiritual evolution. It's part of humanity waking up. My experience has been that there's a lot of people talking about waking up and enlightenment. And I think when we talked about the future of New Thought, I said, or spiritual communities, I said, I think they need to be more experiential, or they're bringing people to the state of oneness and waking up. That I think this is a natural evolution of New Thought it's less about creating stuff as it is about creating this new awareness within us as individual aspects of the one, to knowing and recognizing our true divinity and our role to play in that, which then brings with it a social action piece. And there's so many people in our movement now are jumping into social activism because they see the time is right for that. They want to bring the ideas of love and new thoughts, ideas on oneness into a perspective of how we can treat each other with dignity and love and fairness. And so there's a high social activism aspect to New Thought in these days. And I think that's a natural expression of people who are waking up and they look out at this life and say, we're all one. We're all here going through this beautiful experience to grow and evolve. When we grow and evolve and we wake up, we realize that there's an interconnectedness of all that is, that we're tied to a divine transcendent source that placed us here to move through this experience, and that we have a role to play in creating a better world. And so not only is there a role or a responsibility for me to take this wisdom that I've gained through any kind of degree of awakening that I've had, but to also bring it back to the world in a proactive way. And people are doing it in lots of different ways these ways. Oh, and that counteracts it gives you hope. It gives you hope over the, getting immersed in the news cycle events and things that seem to say that how can we ever cycle out of this kind of stuff? Well, we have to hold hope that, this new birth of waking humanity are the ones who are going to call forth through their own consciousness and their own actions a greater world. And yes, we may have to go through a lot of crap, but it's just like our own life when we went through negative experiences, death, divorce, job loss, etc. And we came out on the other side, hopefully, with wisdom, learning, and compassion.
Yes. And
I knew you'd say that.
What I get stuck on is that we cannot create what is truly that, okay, let me back that up. I don't believe. When I look at the world that I think that we could create, one where, equity isn't even a question, where we're all just people having a life, right? And where there's a sharing of resources that means that everybody, we need that replicator, something fierce, because then food becomes easy, and we don't even have to talk about people having enough to eat anymore, or a place to live. Like if we could create, we cannot create that world with the thinking that created the one that we're in.
Right.
I mean, that's what Einstein, one of those people, a lot smarter than me. But so I feel like at some point in all of this, there has to be a tipping point. And I don't know if it's a tipping point of the number of people, or if it's a tipping point in thought that somehow permeates everyone at the same time in a similar way, where things just where making sure that everyone has enough to eat makes sense to everyone.
Right.
You
Right.
know, and then we make it easy because it could be easy. I mean, what if it was all easy, right? I mean, really, like none of this has to be as hard as we make it. I don't think.
Yeah. Yeah. We're going through a sort of dark night of the soul of the human species at this moment, you know,
Well,
and
especially in this country, you
yeah.
know.
But what you're talking about reminds me, I was reading Ezra Klein's book Abundance recently. And at the very beginning of it, he paints this picture of a world that we could very easily solve so many problems because we have the technology and the ability to do it now.
Yeah.
And it's just that we have walked ourselves into a sort of a political divisive tribal kind of nature of looking at life, that we think we have to be on one side or the other. And so we put barriers in the way, sometimes by purposefully, or sometimes as an unintended consequences of what we thought were good actions. We put barriers in the way to creating an abundant life for everybody. And that's essentially what I thought I got out of his book. And I think there is a degree of truth in this, that humans, because of our sense of separation, or a sense of that, of wanting to win, I want to win while you lose, that whole win-lose mentality keeps us from doing what would be able to create an abundant world where we can tap the natural resources and make it available for everybody. That coupled with
right, when everybody wins, everybody wins.
Right.
The thing we have forgotten, you know, when everybody wins, everybody wins. Like
tide floats all boats, you know.
Yes, and that's very true. You know, we don't all want the same things. We don't all need to have the same things. We can all have our individual level of things, or you know, but it's beyond the material at this point. It's about how we are with each other, not I mean, and the resulting things of how we are with each other have been, some people eat and some people don't, some people have good things and some people don't. If we could get to this, what I would call an enlightened state of understanding that we are all living in a state of connection and oneness with each other, then all the other things do become easy.
Right.
And then we're living in a completely different world overnight.
Yeah.
Potentially. We have that potential.
So in the last couple of minutes here, what would be your advice, Barb, for somebody who is on the path and considers themselves, to move into states of higher awareness or enlightenment or awakening? What would be your thoughts as to how should they go about that, and how should they live their lives?
Do I have advice for anyone else?
From your own experience.
From my own experience, and in this last couple of years, I've had a big loss and grief experience that had me feeling really alone and separate, and just coming out of that. And I would say the thing that kept me moving is just this basic understanding that the world is a place of love, and therefore it is a place. If it's a place of love, then I have to be in that. Then I am included in that, and cannot be separate from it. As much as my brain wants me to sometimes feel separate from it, I am not. And to stay meditated and focused on that, and your friends and family that carry you through, right? So I mean, and then in the moving forward, it's not work, it's practice.
Mm-hmm.
Have some awe moments. Take a breath and let yourself look up from the news and stare at a tree, and remember that trees have always been, they're always going to be, and they will still be, and so will we, I guess. That's a mouthful. That was kind of a mouthful. How about you? I mean, what's your advice? Read, practice?
Well, it's very similar. I think it's that no matter what's going on in the world, whether it's at the personal level like you were talking about, or the massive collective world that so many people seem concerned about right now, is to stay focused on the greater vision of the path. Just keep our eyes on the goal, so to speak. That we've been given this human experience as a gift, and that includes the things that are less than what we want, and it includes those wonderful, glorious moments of love and connectedness that we feel.
Mhm.
And so that, yes, we're going to have the ups and the downs and the goods and the bads, but to keep the eyes on the prize that this life experience is better than not having it. And that we are on a path of growth and learning, and that there's to the degree that you can develop a sense of awareness that everything is interconnected and that there's a divine essence flowing through everything, whatever that looks and feels like for you,
Yeah.
that can bring a sense of peace to you, and it brings and cultivates that sense of awe and that you were talking about. And I think that can move us forward. There's something in us pushing us to that higher stages of who we are, to remembering ourselves of our truth. And let's not get distracted by the world's stuff, either personal or collective.
Well, and I think too, to remember that when we are in that space of understanding, we are creating a greater space of understanding for the entire planet. Like, it's
Right.
not confined to us. We are a larger energetic field than that.
That's right. It's often said that if 10% of the people believe one thing, there's a tipping point, and it doesn't have to be the majority.
Yeah.
And I think the more people that can get to a sense of enlightenment and oneness, that there will reach a tipping point where we're shifting the consciousness every day by the very nature of how we're looking at and thinking about life.
And that is happening. It's hard to see because that's not what we see first on our Facebook feed or on our news feed, you know. But when we find a spiritual community, when we connect with our people, when we do those things, it's much easier to see. And I think that for me has been one of the most important things, is like being in places where that is happening, and being reminded that that is really happening.
Yeah. Focus on the good. See the good. Yeah.
See it, be part of it, and let it move through you. And while you're letting it move through you, send us a note. Tell us about it.
Right. Like this video, support the New Thought Media Network, drop us a comment or question, and we love hearing from you. So thanks, Barb, today. For this wonderful conversation.
This was good. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Take care.